It's approaching 20 to 7. Now, having your house broken into by burglars is, of course, an unsettling experience for everyone. But if you're a child, burglary can leave you with deep psychological effects. And today, Victim Support is urging tougher sentences for those burglars who target homes where there are children. Cherie Taylor and her son Andrew were burgled just after Christmas last year, and the experience has left them very shaken.
I was absolutely devastated. I was crying. I didn't go to bed for 5 days. I slept downstairs. Affects Andrew mainly.
I keep my bedroom light on because I feel unsafe when it's dark. I always try to get to sleep, but I can't because I'm scared if someone walks in. I always check the door before I go to sleep. I was worried for my mum.
I think the kids feel guilty because they didn't lock the door, they didn't lock the gates, so I think they feel a bit guilty that it was because they hadn't done it, but I blame myself as well because I should have checked.
She shouldn't blame herself, should she? And it's when you hear Andrew's 14 actually, and he seems so traumatised by it. Well, let's speak to psychologist Dr. Elizabeth Kilbey and Adam Pemberton from Victim Support, who are calling for tougher rules against burglars who target houses with children in them. Doctor, to you first. I mean, obviously you could see there the mum, you know, what she's saying you understand as an adult, but actually the child's quite shocking actually that he was still so scared.
I think that's the really important point, and the interesting finding from the Take No More research campaign is the first focus to look at the impact of burglary on children, and the research says that 1 in 3 children are still impacted by a burglary as they move into adult life. So this is a really profound effect.
And what is it? I mean, what is it about the child's mind, essentially, that makes this more difficult for them to cope with?
I think what we understand is when a traumatic event happens to a family, such as a burglary, the adults kind of go into sort of practical coping mode, and it's really tempting to think that it would be better, safer, to keep the children away from this kind of horrible grown-up event. We want to buffer them a little bit. But actually what we know is they've understood what's gone on, and by not being part of the conversation, they don't get part of the recovery process. We need to talk to them, and we need them to talk to us and
So
listen.
when the police come around, don't shove them out in the other room, have them sitting with you, talk about it.
Absolutely. It's about involving them in that conversation, because what we know about difficult events, they're processed much better when they're talked about. Yeah. And young children might need to talk about that repetitively.
And Adam, the impact that it has psychologically on children is something that you feel very strongly about, and you want something changed in the law, don't you, to reflect that?
Yes, that's right. There are 600,000 burglaries in England and Wales every year. That's 70 every hour, and that's 300,000 children affected. And what this research, which is the first of its kind, shows that the impact on children is more severe than even parents might imagine. And so what the Take No More campaign that we're launching with ADT is about is about trying to prevent people becoming victims in the first place, but if they are victims, making sure there's support there and making sure that sentencing reflects the psychological harm that parents and children suffer, and not just the material loss.
And do you want tougher sentences for burglars where a house had children in it?
I think the current guidelines indicate that, you know, where a child was present in the house during the burglary, that should be taken into account. We think that actually the impact children feel, they feel it if their house is burgled, whether they are there or not. And so I think it's really important that the guidelines better reflect the kind of impact you saw in the video clip, that actually it can carry forward all through childhood and right into adult life.
Although I guess a burglar wouldn't necessarily know if there were children or anybody in a house when they break and enter, would they? The thing is, what kind of victim support are you providing for children? I mean, is it a hard thing to do? Because I imagine you're more used to dealing with adults, aren't you?
Well, about 1/5 of the calls we receive are related to burglary, and as I say, there are 300,000 children impacted by it every year. We provide practical support around replacing locks and windows, but we also provide emotional support, and that can be to adults and to children. And when it comes to court, if the case comes to court, we also have a young witness service which can provide dedicated support to young people as they go through the often traumatic process of giving evidence in court about what they've experienced.
But include them is what you're saying. If it happens, you can't prevent it, but include them in the conversation. Thanks both. Really interesting. Thank you.
Still to come on the programme, Sir Anthony Hopkins